Thanks. It's great to be here. We're going to be talking a little bit about the future of wearable tech. This is a fascinating place, CES, a fascinating place to be talking about wearable tech because it's so goddamn big. I'm going to say it. I wasn't going to say it. I'm going to say it. It's so goddamn big. 2.2 million square miles. Square feet. Miles would be horribly big. Giant, giant place. In years past, it seems to me, you've always called home to friends or spouses and said, oh gosh, I've walked 100 miles here. In this day and age, we can no longer make that exaggeration. We have to call up and say, I walked exactly 10.2 miles. I've got this thing here, it says I walked precisely 7.5 miles. But did you walk exactly 7.5 miles? James was saying good enough. Current crop of fitness devices is good enough. Maybe so. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I think there's a lot of potential for when these devices get to be exact and precise. So James, it's up to you to make them much, much better.
Oh, did you just call me James?
I'm sorry, I did. Oh, Stephen. It's up to you to make these things exactly better. So what are your thoughts on this? The current crop is good enough. Is
I think good enough is an interesting term because it depends on the use case. What's good enough for the use case? And I think that I've got the power in my hands. Is that right? I thought I had the power. Oh, yeah, slide one.
There we go.
I think the old school wearable case is to show a number. You are exercising, maybe it's a wrist device, maybe it's a headset device, maybe it's an armband, leg band, whatever the case is, you get a number about what it is you've done. What the next generation of wearables is going to do is, oh my God, it's got a life of its own, is it's going to tell you, it's going to give you meaning. It's going to go beyond that. It's going to give you personalized direction. And instead of just telling you, what your heart rate was or what your speed was, whatever the case is, it'll let you know how much you improved and why, and what you need to keep doing and what you need to stop doing. We see right now a lot of our partners, there's a few different use cases for these wearable devices. The way the industry is starting to call it is there's lifestyle cases, and then there are other cases that are called in session. Now, when I first heard that term, I thought it was incest. Which being from Louisiana, I kind of took a little bit of offense to. But it's exercising first responder, military type applications where it's done in a session. And those two use cases have very different requirements on accuracy and comfort and stability. Like in the exercise use case, stability matters more than comfort. And in the lifestyle use case, comfort matters more than stability, but accuracy is required for all of them in different ways.
But we're getting ahead of ourselves here. I think a lot of people may or may not know who Valencell is and why I'm putting you on the spot and saying you can fix this. So briefly, could you tell us a little bit about what you guys do?
Yeah, so Valencell, for those of you who don't know, we're a technology provider in the space. We provide core critical biometric sensing technology to OEMs, people who make like, for example, I'm wearing right now the Jobber Sport Pulse, which is a product powered by our technology. Our technology goes in earbuds, armbands, wristbands, and gives those devices the ability to pull out photoplethysmograms and get really accurate information about heart rate.
I'm sorry, pull out what?
Photoplethysmograms. Yeah, it's PPG, for those of you who might not be familiar with that, it's a term for how you take optical information from the body with blood flow. And the technology is an old technology, but some of the things that have happened in recent years is these advanced sensor modules. And these advanced sensor modules, they can look at your blood flow and remove the noise associated with motion in the environment, and then pull out clean signals that you can get all kinds of stuff from.
So the current trackers that we see, maybe not the stuff we're seeing at the show here, but for the past 2 or 3 or 4 years, whatever, were those using this type of sensor, or is this a different type of sensor?
The more recent additions to the marketplace combine the optics with the inertial sensors in a sensor module that pulls off the information and makes it extremely accurate and pulls off a lot of stuff, not just heart rate, but things like respiration rate. Even we have algorithms, for example, in our company where we can even pull off blood pressure from the ear with these sensor modules.
Blood pressure from the ear.
That's right.
And what are you learning from that?
Well, the technology from the blood pressure measurement being taken. So from the health standpoint, blood pressure is one of the leading indicators of cardiovascular disease. But from the fitness standpoint, you don't even need blood pressure. This is why the good enough comes into place. Like for example, let's say look at a photoplethysmogram over here. So, this is actually a photoplasmogram taken from our lab. This was a female in one of our running tests. This was taken from the ear. There's a lot of information from here that doesn't even have to do with blood pressure that's really interesting. Like, well, first of all, I guess blood pressure, right? The amplitude of these peaks here. This is how, depending on where you're located in the body, it's proportional to your pulse pressure. You can't just get blood pressure from this peak. There's other things you have to do, but it's correlated with it. Also, if you look at these different peaks and average them in time, you get heart rate. If you look at the time between the individual peaks, you get something called RR interval, and that gives you information about your stress state. It gives you information about, for example, you can tell if you have arrhythmia from the health side if you can calculate these RR intervals. Now, if you look at some of these other changes in time that happen as you breathe, it's associated with respiration rate. And then if you look at how the whole level's changing, it's associated with perfusion. So when you process all these things, you get all these cool new metrics that are coming in the marketplace soon. Now, you'll see some of these actually in the marketplace this year. Already, our partners, they provide heart rate and cardiovascular fitness assessments, but you'll soon be seeing breathing rate and heart rate variability, but they'll be used in interesting ways.
Which is a huge step forwards from I walked 7.2 miles. And I think leads us to one of my issues with the entire fitness space. I think that the vast majority of wearables today are looking at things entirely backwards. The entire industry is premised incorrectly, right? Because I'm quantified right now. We know exactly how many steps I've taken. And frankly, I don't care.
Every step you take.
Thank you for that. At the end of the day, I don't care how many steps I've taken. What I care about is losing 5 pounds that I gained over Thanksgiving from eating too much turkey. And all of the devices that we have today, perhaps because the sensors that we have were a little bit too limited, don't really present that information. So to get beyond that, to get some of this data and use it in a more actionable way, do we need smarter sensors? Do we need different UIs? Do we need a better way of presenting data to the consumer themselves?
Well, there's certain things that change in time in a very interesting way. Can you put it on slide 10? And we've shown this in our labs. We've done clinical studies in our labs where we've shown this to be true. The data itself, is just a number, but if you process it in context of your activity, some really interesting things pull out that can be used in a proper fitness training program. For example, when you first start, it's interesting to see some of these technologies out at CES this year that are trying to do seamless resting heart rate detection. Say you're trying to lose weight. Not you, of course, because you're so damn handsome. But if you were, one of the things is that would be the last thing that would change in a proper fitness training plan. And so what you want to do is guide the person who's in this plan, whether it's to get fitter or to lose weight. In an interesting way, you want to guide them towards that end. And one of the first things that changes when you start a proper fitness training plan is resting heart rate. Resting heart rate changes, and it changes in the first 4 weeks. Now, you can't just use that to get people excited because, it's after 2 weeks you go, I've walked the same steps all the time. It's not really interesting. Same thing with resting heart rate. After 4 weeks, you're like, okay, look, it's about as low as it can go. Resting heart rate out to infinity or asymptotic is 0. That kind of sucks. Nobody wants to be at that resting heart rate. So eventually you get to a peak someplace. But one thing that continues to change is something that we call at Valencell cardiovascular or cardiac efficiency. And this is, to oversimplify it, which I love to do, it's the fitter you are, the less heartbeats it should take to move 1 step. Now, the calculation isn't that easy because you have to do it in activity context. And if y'all have any questions after this, I can explain to you how you do that. And basically, that improves over the course of your fitness training. And you get to see that, and you're going in the right direction. But at some point, your heart's done the best it possibly can for your particular physiology. But something that changes more chronically is your VO2 max. And this usually doesn't start to change until after.
That's the volume of air that you can take into your lungs?
Good question, yeah. I'm talking to a nerdolescent here, yeah. I should be saying it's exactly what you're saying. It's the primary marker for your aerobic capacity or your overall cardiovascular fitness. Problem is that takes a while to change. And we've seen in our studies when you do proper fitness training, that won't even really change until after a month, maybe even 2. So the last thing to change is your weight. So I think what's interesting is that people can take these metrics that are generated with this new technology and apply it towards storyboarding different use cases. I've given you one example, there's many more. Things like, for example, heart rate recovery I didn't put on here. It turns out that is really interesting, but it has to be done in context. To show you here, Here is some results from one of Valencell's clinical studies where if you look at heart rate recovery, which is in the bottom right, sometimes it'll improve in a fitness program, then it'll go down. Can you guess why? Overtraining. But you can't tell if you've overtrained just by that. You have to have the other contextual information. So a lot of this data feeds on itself in a very interesting way. And you can kind of, when you see all these different things and how they change over time, you could kind of start to see how this data really can be used to tell people real stuff. Like I can know a definition that, okay, yeah, I'm working out too hard. Or I can know a definition that what I'm doing is all right.
That's an incredible amount of data that you can get just from a wrist?
Yeah, that technology, this data, by the way, was taken from an earbud. But the PPG technology, the ear is the most accurate spot, and that's why we like to do the test that way. But if you contextualize it, if you're good enough for the use case, you can apply it to the wrist as well. But you have to discount a lot of data with the wrist because the wrist is a terrible platform for getting really accurate information from the body.
So speaking of accuracy, so one of the main use, I would say, for a lot of these fitness trackers is fitness, right? We all want to lose weight. We all want to get in better health. We want this and that. It seems to me that when you get to a certain level of accuracy, we can do a lot more with this data. At what point do we have data that is so accurate that I can supply it to my doctor and skip that annual checkup because I'm having second-by-second checkups directly off of my wrist or my ear or wherever? Are we there? Are your sensors there?
It's still
right
not
now?
there yet. And actually, I got to say that there is a lot of experimentation going on in the marketplace now. You know, we see it with our partners, some of them who have products in the marketplace now, but some that are launching products soon. And it's almost scary the amount of experimentation that's going on. The hype definitely well precedes what can be done. And it's not just a matter of accuracy. You've got to know when you're accurate. You've got to know when you've got an accurate reading and why and what context in order to provide that kind of information.
Just checking my notes, want to make sure I touched on a bunch of topics. We could obviously go on for a while here. We're obviously very passionate and enthusiastic. But if you all have questions, this is the guy that knows all there is to know about these sensors. So eager to take some questions if anybody has any.
Does anybody have any questions for Stephen?
There's a mic right there, sir.
Steve, I'm Steve from Connected Rock, and my question is related to the fact that the industry is currently focused on monitoring and tracking. We saw this in medicine as well. When are we going to get to the point where we have attachable devices that actually apply training methodologies like inspiratory resistance for muscle training and overcoming shortness of breath or the feeling of dyspnea?
So I believe what you're talking about is essentially a dynamic therapy. Or is that what you're talking about?
Certain fitness devices that might apply load to breathing and also monitor. Right now, all this is based on monitoring. Monitoring's not that good. The heart rate is a weak parameter when it comes to measuring oxygen consumption. There's a lot of variables. Fluid was something you could have brought up as well. You go out drinking.
Hydration status.
Go out drinking the night before you come, your heart rate's elevated artificially high, you're training to a heart rate, you're under training. Those kind of things. But in addition to that, these attachables, these wearables, can also impose a load on us. When are we going to get to the point where we have that feedback loop, perhaps, where we're applying load during our training through these attachables? Is that never going to happen? Is that 10 years away, 5 years away?
There are some folks who have been working on this and been pretty public about it. I don't know if you would consider this an example, but Technogym has been working on this, where they have very sophisticated treadmills that will apply loads dynamically to get people into different states. Now, to the extent that they've been applying gas exchange technology, like indirect calorimetry or some kind of air resistance or anything like that in analysis, that I don't know. But I do know that they've been using heart rate, because it's one of the easiest things to detect on the treadmill, combined with load changes that are dynamic to start testing out different fitness analytics techniques.
Couple-part question here. You had mentioned your data was taken with earbuds.
That's right,
as opposed to the wrist.
That data I showed you was all earbud based.
So the earbuds aren't left in 24/7. What period of time were they taken over?
Oh, so this was all in session. So people did a very well-defined training regimen, And they were wearing the headphones while they were exercising, as well as ECG. And also, they were also wearing some other benchmark devices.
Okay, so it just wasn't the earbuds. Other sensors.
The data you saw was from the earbuds, but we had benchmark devices to gauge, make sure the earbuds were measuring correctly.
Okay, so if we were going to do a benchmark for progression or regression, it'd have to be done the same activity, same period of time to get the aggregate data to know how we're trending, right?
So, for example, if you wanted to replicate this data, you'd want to have people wearing the headphones with our technology, be collecting the data, and apply it towards some kind of storyboard like that.
Right, but that was over a period of time, right?
That was a 4-week study, actually, or a 4 or 6 week study.
Okay, one other quick question. Any thoughts about doing some sort of, not intrusive blood analysis through some sort of IR measurement or something like that?
Like analyzing the blood itself, like maybe the blood constituents?
But not actually the blood itself, some way without being, piercing the skin or something like that through IR or some sort of...
That's a $1 billion idea if you can make that work.
Or
Okay, I'll work on it.
with context of, like, what particular analyte are you talking about? Is it hemoglobin-based, or is it?
So just a way to increase performance, knowing whether it's nutrients in the blood or oxygen levels or something else that you can gather from the blood that you can't get from just normal measurements.
Yeah, there have been some companies, some very early startups that have presented ideas about doing this, and there's no scientific support for it yet. If there is a way to do it, I'm really eager, but I got to say, I've looked at data from tests done, hyperspectral analysis done at rest, and I have not been convinced that you can actually tell what's in the blood this way. Now, maybe in the year 25, the man is still alive, there's different ways to do it. But right now, that definitely is far, far away. Unfortunately, I wish you could, but there's no way to tell the blood constituents to a degree to speciate between different nutrients. Now, one of the things you brought up was about fitness tracking in terms of the in-session case. One of the things we did is with wrist devices, for lifestyle devices, you may not want the person to try and do an exercise for a VO2 max test. And in that case, we developed an algorithm that does it based off respiration rate in context of activity. And you need to have the activity context in order for that to actually work. And it's really interesting. Could you put up slide 7? If you look at the activity context and the respiration rate, you actually can pull out the VO2 max we've shown of the person in a lifestyle case. So they don't need to be wearing earbuds or anything. They can be wearing a wristband. And as long as you know you're accurately measuring the breathing rate and you're measuring the cadence, you can actually pull out the VO2 max. Yeah, I'll just put it up here for you to see, folks to take a look at it if they want.
Oh, I'm handing out the mic.
Oh,
Can I ask you a less dorky question?
you bet.
That was very dorky.
That was as dorky as it gets.
You're talking about in-ear devices as opposed to wrist devices.
Yeah, in this case it's wrist. On the other slides I showed you is ear. Yeah.
So as a guy who knows the future of these chips, where is the best place? What sort of fitness devices are we going to see in the future? Are we going to stop wearing all of these things?
No, I think you're going to see...
Are we going to start strapping things here?
Well, that may happen. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of people banking a lot on, and I'm really skeptical about this, but a lot of people are banking a lot on clothing, sensor-laden clothing. It'll be really interesting to see if that works. The problem I see right now is people like to wash their clothes, and that ends up affecting the sensitivity of the sensors. Now, but it'll be really interesting if that does take off. So right now what I see, the form factors I see coming out in the marketplace from what we can see that's coming, it kind of falls into 3 categories. Earbuds, of course, because people already exercise with earbuds. Wristbands because of the smartwatch craze, and it looks like that is going to continue to grow. What rate is questionable. But then the third thing, oddly enough, a lot of people don't talk about this, is some people don't want to wear a device or have people know they see it. So some people want it hidden. It's about 20 to 30% of the population. So I think you will see some devices that are either in maybe the upper arm, maybe even in some cases patches, maybe in some cases leg bands, but things that people cannot see that you can wear 24/7.
I was going to say leg band. You've got a lot of veins down there. That's a good
That's right.
spot.
Yeah, plus, it makes my legs look more beefcake, when I have them tight enough.
Any more questions for Dr. Stephen or Jeremy?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm not touching implants right now, but I actually am bullish about them. Medtronic, is anybody from Medtronic in here right now? Yeah, I mean, there are some really amazing advancements going on there. And I mean, it's still a ways away, but I would say that, in a couple decades, I actually would not surprise me if a couple decades, people start being willing to wear implants even if they don't have a known health condition. Because but it's still a ways away. It's not in the very near term, but it's really interesting.
Would you wear one?
Yes, I would. I'm Cajun, so I have to. I mean, I have the terminal condition of, a limited lifespan. So, I mean, yeah, I would wear one. Especially if it could actuate, like somebody was talking about earlier, and maybe even prevent the heart attack,
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Jeremy.
All right.
Pleasure.
Thanks for y'all time. Happy to talk with y'all after.